Nice. Which one's that?
Chemistry.
Chemistry? All right.
I have to take that one.
Good. Well, let's see, where are we today? Olivia's gonna do talk for us, right? And Kenyon, doing your talk, right? Looking at me suspiciously, like hoping I was gonna forget or something.
Look how good Maddie Taylor looks.
Maddie, as always, you can say, I have to be cautious, you always have to be
Yeah.
careful up here. So, not saying anybody in here, but, in other classes, if somebody comes in, like it's a man, I can say anything I want, basically. But if it's a female, I can't say anything I want, like, oh, nice hairdo, or, oh, whatever, I'm not supposed to comment on clothes or any of that. Every now and then I will anyway, like, Mag, you're a Yankees fan? Ever been to Yankee Stadium? It's very exciting.
No,
place to go.
I haven't.
So that kind of thing, fine, right? But you have to be cautious about other stuff. That's all about professionalism and decorum and understanding what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. Sometimes it takes us a while to figure that out. It took me a while. But then as soon as you get corrected, you're like, okay, I get it. No better. Me from a long time ago. Fortunately, I don't have those particular kind of challenges. Because I know what to do and what not to do. Speaking of which, where we are today is 2 catch-up speeches, our final 2 arguments. Then we need to set up the important person in your life speech that we're going to be doing next week, Monday, Wednesday. Well, next week's our final week of classes, so just about hit the end. We do have a final in here. We'll talk more about that. So you don't get under that. You have to be here.
Yes. It's extemporaneous, right?
What's that?
It's extemporaneous, right?
Extemporaneous on a subject that you might have some clue about.
Actually, I don't know if we have time for that.
What's that?
Today I
only
was
have 2 speeches, so.
okay. Well, I was on LinkedIn today, and I screenshotted this, and it says, "I'm excited to announce that Tulsa, Oklahoma will be the home to Meta's newest AI data center, our first in the state, 28th in the U.S., and 32nd overall globally. This facility will represent an investment of more than $1 billion.
Where's it gonna be?
Tulsa.
In Tulsa, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't say where.
I think off the turnpike, like as you're like passing Catoosa, they like cleared out a bunch of like land. And I wonder if that's where it's gonna be at. 'Cause my boyfriend
I know
mentioned
where you're
something
talking about.
Yeah.
Right, past Catoosa,
Uh-huh.
or no, just before, well,
Yeah.
If you're going from Claremore,
yes.
yeah, but if you're going this way, yeah.
Right, yeah, I think that's true. Well, it's pretty interesting. We have a huge similar thing going on in Stillwater, and it's gonna be interesting to see how all this shakes down over time. We can talk about other things here shortly, but first we have a few speeches to get going. Wyatt, how you doing?
Good, yourself.
All right, everything's good. Do you do you already did you do your speech already? Or you still have yours to do?
Nope, I saw.
Okay, so we have 3. So let's get these knocked out, and then we'll talk about our final speech, final formal speech semester, okay? Good. All right, who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
All right, Olivia, take off. Put all this back here.
Good, very good.
You look like you're starting to run a 100-meter race or something. You're up there stretching, moving your head back and forth. Oh, that's okay. You gotta loosen up. Okay, give me just a second here. Wait, where's my pen?
Do you need a pen?
I do. I put some of it there. You see what? Yeah, toss me that one. Just tomahawk it back here.
Oh.
Oh, that was impressive.
Awesome. Good pass. Catch wasn't bad either.
That was pretty good.
Okay, let's hear it, Olivia.
Imagine walking into a classroom where students are fully engaged, eyes on the teacher, pencils moving, pages turning, minds focused. No notifications, no distractions, just learning. That's the kind of environment we're losing as technology takes over education, and it's exactly why we need to return to pen, paper, and textbooks. As an elementary education major, this issue matters deeply to me because the habits students form early shape how they learn for the rest of their lives. I want to create a classroom where my future students build strong thinking, memory, and focus skills. In the digital dilemma, the argument is clear. While technology promises efficiency and innovation, it often comes at the cost of deep thinking and meaningful learning. Students today are more connected than ever, yet ironically, less focused. Laptops and tablets in classrooms may seem helpful, but in reality, they open the door to distractions like social media, games, and messaging. Instead of taking notes, many students are toggling between tabs, dividing their attention, and absorbing less information. Research by Pam Mueller and Daniel Oppenheimer shows that writing by hand over on a laptop improves memory and comprehension. When students use pen and paper, they are forced to slow down, process information, and summarize their ideas in their own words. Typing, on the other hand, often leads to mindless transcription. The result, students may have pages of notes, but little understanding of the material. Technology also weakens critical thinking. With instant access to answers, students are less likely to think through problems or think independently. In a traditional classroom, learning requires effort, flipping through textbooks, analyzing information, engaging in discussion. These processes build problem-solving skills that are essential for real life. When everything is one click away, the mental discipline begins to fade. Now, some may argue that technology prepares students for the real world. They say students need to learn digital skills to succeed in modern careers, and that technology can make learning more interactive and accessible. And yes, those points have some truth. Technology can be useful when used intentionally. However, the issue is not whether technology has value, it's how much it dominates the classroom. When it becomes a primary tool for learning, it replaces the very skills students need most: focus, discipline, and deep thinking. Students can learn digital skills outside the classroom, but the classroom should be a place where their minds are trained and think critically without constant digital assistance. Another major issue is the impact on social and emotional development. Classrooms filled with screens that reduce face-to-face interaction, students become isolated behind devices rather than collaborating, communicating, and building relationships. Education is not just about information, it's about connection, discussion, and growth. Technology, in many cases, interrupts that. Let's also talk about educational fairness. Not every student has equal access to reliable technology or the internet at home. By relying heavily on digital tools, we unintentionally widen the gap between students. Pen, paper, and textbooks level the playing field, ensuring that every student has an equal opportunity to succeed. Now, this isn't to say technology has no place in the world. It absolutely does. But the classroom should be a space for focus, discipline, and deep learning, not constant digital stimulation. We need to ask ourselves, are we preparing students to think or just to click? By returning to traditional tools, we bring back structure, reduce distractions, and promote stronger cognitive skills. We create an environment where students are truly present mentally and physically. So let's go back to what works. Let's trade screens for notebooks, notifications for concentration, and shortcuts for real understanding. Because sometimes moving forward in education means going back to the basics. Any questions?
I don't really. Go ahead, Keaton.
You said something about a level playing field. Would you want your kid to be on the same playing field as everybody else's?
I mean,
So if you were a billionaire, would you want somebody whose family makes $20,000, $40,000 a year? Would you want them to be on the same level playing field as your kid?
I would want my kid to have the best that they can have. But as a teacher's perspective, I want every kid to have the same opportunities to succeed and kind of, yeah.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
And the only thing I would say about that is don't say before
Yes.
you give your answer.
Yes.
I think Kenyon's point is well taken too. If you're a billionaire though, you're sending your kids to private schools.
Yeah.
If you're not a billionaire, you're sending your kids likely to a public school, depending on where you fit in the bracket. But I think you've made some really good points here, and I'm glad you brought the sources in. The only thing for improvement I would say is you said some might argue, and I'm always telling everybody to say, don't say some. Who is it that's arguing? Who's on the other side of that argument? So you want to put that in there. Now that's a polished comment without all the positives. You opened with a good question. What's at stake? Better education for our children. You have a personal investment because you're a developing teacher. Really solid thesis, well organized. You did use other sources well from the book. Those points were good. When you said your opposite side, you provided a good rationale for the opposite side, but we just don't know who said it. You know, you say some might argue, well, who? But then you had a really good rebuttal to that. And he said some really solid things in there regarding educational fairness and what education is about. So I thought all that was good. You're using your hands well up there. You're moving those around. Your volume is good. I think when you get if you get in an elementary school classroom, you'll have to raise your volume until you learn to keep everybody silent. But there will be a point where you'll have to use your outside voice inside. I thought you were talking way more than reading, so I felt like you practiced this a couple times. And so I thought the delivery was really good. And overall, just really solid. So let's give you Olivia a hand. Good job. Way to go, Olivia. Who's ready to bounce up there next? Kenyon, you look like you're turning, picking up your tablet. You're ready to get in there. You think SGA should be the MVP this year?
Yes.
More so than Jokic?
Yes.
That's the argument that I want to go down. Okay, you're on.
Imagine having an emergency and you can't afford to fix it. That's an issue a lot of people run into every day because they struggle to save money or don't save early enough. Today I'm going to tell you about the importance of saving money, how it helps in emergencies, and how it sets you up for better future success. It helps with unexpected things like car repairs or medical bills. It reduces financial stress and pressure, kind of like a safety net. And you don't have to rely on others. It also helps with your future goals, like the really nice car you want or the big house you want. It builds independence and it helps you not live paycheck to paycheck. It also builds discipline. It teaches responsibility and self-control. It helps with money managing in long term. Counter argument would be some people don't make enough to save, but even saving a small amount will help make a big difference. That's a difference between a $2,000 loan and a $5,000 loan. In conclusion, saving money helps you stay prepared and for certain situations. It gives you more options, and it builds better habits. So start saving, even if it's a small amount, because your future self will greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Any questions?
Okay, I have one. What about before we get to your sources for all your stuff, what about those who oversave and underlive? So they're so stressed out about saving everything, they don't actually enjoy their lives. What do you tell those people?
Better rather have it and not need it and to need it and not have it.
Okay, that's a response. Okay, I'm okay with that. Well, and I've confronted this as we get toward retirement. You're supposed to save for retirement. What happens is people save and save and save, and they get to a certain age and they're not healthy enough to even go enjoy their money anymore. So there is an argument that says, spend your money while you can. Enjoy your life while you can. So what I want to say on this particular speech, though, Kenyon, first of all, it was stronger and you were more confident than your test speech last week. I was missing your personal investment. You didn't tell us why this matters to you. Like, why do you care?
Why do I? Because you can get what you want when you save your money.
Okay, not you, me. What about you?
Because I can get what I want.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere. We want to make sure that in argumentative speech, you're providing a reason why we should believe you. And so you need to give us an example that says, I've been saving $1 a week since I was 12. And then I invested it, and next thing you know, now I've got $16,000 in my investment account. So you want to set us up with some kind of verifiable qualification that you have to discuss this subject, similar to when you showed us the dental x-rays. Okay, you're a dental technician or studying developing dental professional. So we got you on that. But on this one, why should we take financial advice from you? Not saying that you don't have good financial advice, but you want to set up that credibility up front. I also thought that the structure was solid, but you didn't provide any sources for either side. You didn't tell us, aside from you, but you didn't give us that credibility that we need to believe you. So you need to say, according to the Financial Times, not enough people have money in their savings account.
Okay.
In order to prepare for the long term, you should, because Financial Times says we need more money than we think we're gonna need when we get older and don't have a steady income. Same for your opposite side. I said, okay, well, that's an opposite side, but who says that? Just you? So all I wanna say on the rest of it, though, is it was strong. And here's the thing, Kenyon, you've gotten better and better through the semester. You started really soft-spoken, almost timid. And yet today, not only did you respond with a question to the previous arguer, did you see that chair just,
It's me.
why it just freaked me out there. I was like, that chair started spinning, I was like,
Sorry,
how
I'm
did
on
that
legs.
happen? Okay, I got you. Just gonna mess with me for a second. Ghost, the Hillcat ghost is here. We won't go down that path. What I was complimenting you on was your development over the course of the semester. You're more confident now than when you started, and makes me happy because I like seeing that growth. Bless
Excuse me.
you.
Thank
What you
you.
can start to do now is apply a little more academic element to whatever you're doing, whether it's a speech or your further classes. Make sure that you bring in that credible source to support what it is that you have to say. Okay? So you've made a tremendous amount of progress, and like all of us, we can always improve a little bit. Okay? Let's give Kenyon a hand. Yeah, you made it. We only have one more to go, or one more speech after. Ari, I think you're up next, and then Wyatt, and I think that's gonna do it for us.
Are you ready?
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Hold on, I have a mint. Let me finish chewing it.
Wait, what did you say? Get rid of your gum? There's a
I
trash
have,
can
no, I
right
have a
over there.
mint. I'm chewing it up.
You gonna swallow it?
Well, I was already chewing on it, so.
So what does that mean?
It's a
It's
myth.
gone now.
Oh, it's a mint. Oh, it's not
Yeah.
gum. Okay, so you don't swallow gum.
Okay. Imagine being 16 years old and it's your first year of high school. All you want to do is fit in and make friends. Everyone around you is vaping and smoking, and it's considered cool and normal. They all say, come on, just one hit, it won't hurt. And then after one hit, you're hooked. What have you got yourself into, and what will you do? In recent years, vaping has rapidly gained popularity, especially among teenagers and young adults. It is often marketed as a safer alternative to traditional smoking, leading many people to believe it's relatively harmless. However, this perception is misleading. Despite its growing acceptance, vaping, including nicotine, THC, and CBD products, lead to serious health risks, contribute to addiction, and should be more strictly regulated to protect public health. One of the most concerning aspects of vaping is its impact on physical health. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, states that most e-cigarettes contain nicotine, which is highly addictive and can harm brain development in adolescents, whose brains continue developing until about age 25. CDC also reports that vape aerosols can contain harmful substances such as heavy metals, inflammable organic compounds, and cancer-causing chemicals. In addition, THC vaping products have been linked to serious lung injuries, including EVALI, which caused over 2,800 hospitalizations in the United States, according to the CDC. Even CBD vapes, often seen as harmless, are not well regulated, and the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, has warned that many CBD products may contain inaccurate labeling. Another major issue is the rise of addiction among young people. Data from the National Institute of Drug Abuse shows that millions of teens report using e-cigarettes, making vaping one of the most common forms of substance use among youth. Flavored products play a major role with most young users, starting with flavors like fruit, mint, or candy. These flavors make vaping more appealing and hide the harshness of nicotine or THC, increasing repeated use. Research also shows nicotine can affect attention, learning, and mood, while THC use at a young age has been linked to memory and mental health issues. Supporters of vaping often argue that it can help adults quit smoking traditional cigarettes, while some evidence suggests it may help certain individuals, but organizations like the CDC emphasize that vaping can also lead young people to start using traditional cigarettes. Instead of reducing harm overall, vaping has introduced new risks and expanded nicotine and substance use among younger populations. This issue is important to me.
I found this on the web for instead of...
Because it directly affects people in my age group and community. Vaping has become extremely common, and many people underestimate how addictive and harmful it can be, especially with THC and CBD products that are often seen as safer. Seeing how normalized it has become makes it clear that more awareness is needed so people can make more informed decisions. In conclusion, vaping is not the safe alternative it is often portrayed to be. Whether it involves nicotine, THC, or CBD, it carries real health risks, contributes to addiction, and affects younger generations in serious ways. Although some may argue it may help adults quit smoking, the overall impact remains harmful. For these reasons, stronger regulations and increased public awareness are necessary. Thank you. Any questions?
I thought you fleshed this out much better than last time. First of all, let's flip that at the end. Let's go.
Oh.
Questions? Thank you. Okay, that. I would also say how you're standing right now, free your hands. Right? Like bring them up in front of you, put them right on the other side of the munnasine, or whatever that says on your shirt. Just put your up like this. Yeah, like sparkle fingers, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Or you ever play basketball?
No.
Never? Any sport?
I mean, maybe when I was younger with my cousin.
Okay, when you play defense, you gotta have your hands up, right? So you don't want them up here while you're talking, but you do want them here. Most powerful speakers have their hands in front of them, at least one, and often two. And it takes you a little while to develop your own style, but if you're just up there with your hands at your side and kind of swaying back and forth, that's not what we want. We want you talking this whole thing. And that's what I would, first of all, let me say positive things. Excellent structure, very well organized. I liked your intro. There are serious things at stake. I was a little vague on your personal connection. You started talking about high schoolers, but you didn't really, I don't think that when I was in high school, I saw this. It was more like, you all know this happens, right? Well, no, because when I was in high school, we didn't have vape, so it wasn't
Right.
part of my high school experience. So you want to set that up kind of like Kenyon's deal, where up front let us know. Now, last time you told us that your family actually has a business that sells vapes, so that gives you even more credibility. So you could bring something like that up as well. I'm not saying you have to say that, but you always want to instill that credibility in yourself, so we believe you. Outside of that, very good thesis. Also, and everybody could take note, when you talked about physical health, you referenced the CDC. When you talked about CBD products, you talked about the FDA. When you talked about addiction, you talked about NIDA, whatever that stands for. All good. But then when you did your opposite side, you said some evidence exists. Can you tell us where that evidence came from? So that was the only shortcoming on that particular one, is not filling in that source as well. As you go forward in your other academic essays, as you go through your classes, just avoid the generalities. And if you do say a generality, you've got to back it up with some specific data or fact that you can source. Okay? Outside of that, really good rebuttal to the opposite side. You restated your thesis really well. You talked about vaping not being a safe alternative, and we need increased public awareness. You didn't really tell us what to do, other than, like, Kenyon here at least is like, save your money, right? Olivia here is like, if you want your kids to have the full experience, think about taking some of the technology away and getting them writing with paper. So really all we can do on this issue is potentially tell our friends, tell somebody who's vaping that that's not good for them, if you feel like you can do that without them unfriending you or whatever. So we need to be able to take action at the end. But overall, very well structured, well supported. I thought it was really solid. You read more than you talked, but I think you've added a bunch to this and maybe haven't practiced it 10 times. So you did have to read more than you talked. As time goes on, you always want to talk more than read. Outside of that, just very good all the way around. So let's give her a hand. Way to go, Arthur. And then there was Wyatt. Did you see in England yesterday, they introduced legislation to ban smoking for anybody born after about 2003, I think it is?
Yep.
So they're just gonna outlaw it, like you can't buy anything, so it's gonna be interesting.
So eventually they'll just like stop?
Yeah, that's not, oh, you're out of here, Emily?
Yeah.
Oh, you can miss my RuPaul story, you'll have to watch it later.
Yeah, I'll watch it later.
Like the drag queen?
No spoilers here.
Stay tuned.
See you later.
I can watch it live.
Yes, you can.
Oh, okay.
We'll get to it, we'll get through
Okay.
Wyatt here. Okay, you're on.
What does it really mean to care about a life? Is it simply keeping someone alive no matter the cost? Or is it just making sure that life is lived with dignity, comfort, and humanity? I ask that question because I have seen this reality firsthand. I watched two people that I love, my grandparents, suffer 2 weeks straight, not getting better, not recovering, just waiting for the inevitable. Every day was just pain. Every moment felt longer than the last, and the hardest part wasn't just knowing they were going to die, it was knowing that there's nothing we are allowed to do to ease their suffering. That experience changed how I see this issue. Today I would like to talk about euthanasia, one of the most controversial and emotional topics in our society today. While many laws across America restrict or ban it, I believe euthanasia should be legal, but only to a certain degree under strict and careful regulation. First, what is euthanasia? Euthanasia is the act of ending the life under medical care from a curable illness or irreversible condition in order to relieve unbearable pain. This is not about giving up on a life. This is about facing reality when medicine has reached its limit. When survival has no longer living and existence becomes suffering. So let's be honest. This topic is uncomfortable in so many ways because our moral belief is we believe that life should be always preserved in comfort. I have talked to certain students around our campus about this issue, and many believe ending a life is wrong in any condition. They fear that legalizing euthanasia could lead to abuse, mistakes, or pressure on vulnerable individuals. And those concerns matter. They come from a place of protecting people, and that is something that we should never ignore. But we also ask the harder question: are we truly protecting people if we are forcing them to suffer? When euthanasia is completely banned, suffering does not disappear, it gets prolonged. When patients with terminal illness can be left in constant pain, sometimes unable to move, speak, or even recognize their loved ones, families are forced to stand by and watch, and powerless to help. That's not just physical pain, it's emotional pain to everyone involved. Now compare that to places like Canada, where medically assisted dying is legal. Patients must clearly consent, be mentally capable, and be approved by multiple doctors. In those cases, people are not choosing death, they are choosing peace over prolonged suffering. They are choosing dignity over helplessness. And their families are giving something more powerful: closure instead of prolonged grief. This should not mean that euthanasia should be freely available without rules. It should allow under these certain conditions that I personally believe. 1. The patient must be mentally capable. 2. The decision must be voluntary consistent. 3. Multiple doctors must agree on this diagnosis and condition. And 4. There must be oversight to prevent abuse. This is not about making death easier. This is about making suffering end, where there's no other option. Because there's a difference between living and simply existing in pain. Now, I have talked to a professor here on campus about this, and they believe that euthanasia should never be allowed, that we should always preserve life no matter the situation. They worry about a slippery slope, where rules might weaken over time. They also argue that we should focus entirely on improving pain management and end of care life. And yes, those are valid concerns. But even with the best medical care, we cannot eliminate all suffering. There are limits to what medicine can or cannot do. So the real question becomes, when someone is beyond saving, beyond healing, and beyond relief, who are we really protecting by forcing them to stay? In conclusion, this issue is not just about laws and policies, it's about the people. It's about the patient lying in the hospital bed knowing there's no recovery. It's about the family standing beside them feeling helpless. It's about the moments where compassion matters more than control. Euthanasia... Sorry, one sec. Euthanasia should not be taken lightly. It should never be abused. It should never replace care. But in rare extreme cases where suffering cannot be relieved and death is certain, we should not force people to stay and endure pain just to prove that we value life. Because true compassion is not just about keeping someone alive, it's about how we allow them to live and how we allow them to leave. And once again, I leave this question. When someone is beyond saving, beyond healing, and beyond relief, who are we really protecting by forcing them to stay? Is there any questions?
I don't have a question, but what do you want us to do?
So, reason why I just want people to start thinking about might want to allow euthanasia in certain degrees to happen.
Okay. Wyatt, I thought this was really solid all the way around. Good introduction. Obviously, what's at stake is our quality of life and dignity of death. Your personal experience and belief is also established well. You had a good thesis. What I like that we did was you brought the opposite side up first, and then you debunk that, and that's what we call a scarecrow argument, where you go ahead and put the opposite side up there and then pound the stuffing out of it. Then, after you did that, you gave us some good examples of where it's working, like Canada. Then you went back to the opposite side again and did a rebuttal for that. So I thought that was really good. Good restatement of thesis, your volume's good up there, good mix of talking and reading. And I want you to just keep working on your hand thing. Where you, as I mentioned the other day, you're kind of like playing a drum.
Yeah. I was trying to regulate that as
Yeah, so as time goes on, just work on that. Maybe just use one hand or just let them pause and keep talking. Because it really looks like
just going
it's almost distracting because it's the same beat as your speech. So what you want to do is get to the point where you kind of hold them quiet for a second and then maybe make a gesture, maybe open them up one every now and then, something like that. Put them like this occasionally, but not just constant. So it's different, you know, everybody has a different thing. Like I was talking to Ari, it's like, move your hands, girl. And whereas you, I'm like, boy, right? Don't move your hands so much, right? So it's always a balance in figuring out what your style is and how you're going to make that work. So aside from that, I just thought it was really good, well developed, used good sources. So good work. Let's hear it. Yay. Okay, how are we doing? We got 10 minutes left, and we're going to set up our next speech. And let me give you these. Kenyon, here, that's for you. Ari, take one of these. And welcome, and Olivia, that. No points off for your phone going off. We'll let that slide. I hope I have enough of these today. Let's see, I'll kind of count everybody up. Take one of those. Now this gets into the realm of special occasion speeches, which you all at some point or another may have to do. And so the way that I structure this is the idea of celebrating an important person in your life. Need another one for other Emily.
Okay.
Just enough. So special occasion speeches, you may or may not have a lot of time to prepare, or you might have a lot of time to prepare, but these are things where maybe you have to speak at a funeral, or you speak at a wedding, or you speak at an award ceremony, or you're recognizing someone for a certain reason. Well, in this case, what I like to do is a speech on a person that has inspired you one way or another. And I often tell a few stories when I get to this point. There's about 10 minutes left. A lot of us use our parents because our parents have been inspiring to us. Perhaps a sibling has been inspiring to us. Maybe our significant other has been inspiring to us, or a coach or a teacher, a pastor, somebody who's had an impact on our life one way or the other, or just by how they have lived and what they've overcome teaches us lessons and inspires us to keep on going when times get tough. So what I like to do is, before I put this on the screen, I'm going to roll it over here. See, I don't think you see it over there. No, okay. So what I want to ask you first is, have you ever not known where you're going to sleep at night? One person says yes. You ever worried about where you're going to spend the night, where you're going to have to sleep, where your bed's going to be? For a lot of people, that's a unknown experience because you know where you're going at night. You know where the safety of your home is. You know where the safety of your bed is in your bedroom or wherever it is that you sleep. And of course, there are a lot of people that are houseless in the world and don't have a place to go. But I'm not really talking about street people necessarily, but just occasionally things happen where people don't have a place to go. So back when I was going to college, I was probably a freshman, sophomore, a little bit older, non-traditional student because I went to the military first. So I was probably around 22 in this period, 22, 23. And while I was going to college and taking a speech class much like this, and it was exactly the same semester, I worked at a nightclub in Atlanta, and I was the doorman and bouncer and stagehand. And so my job was to check everybody's IDs, and then at certain points go into the club if somebody's causing a problem and eject them. Or when the bands arrived in the afternoon, excuse me, when the bands would arrive, I'd help them load their equipment in. Or at the end of the night, I'd help them load it back out into whatever vehicle they had. So this was Atlanta, Georgia, circa 1983. And I was doing my nightly cleanup duties. And I went across the street where I had to pick up all the trash in the parking lot, put it in a trash bag, and then bring that back across the street and throw it in the dumpster. And this is typically the last thing that happened. Everybody's gone. After that, just the 2 or 3 of us left would lock the doors and we'd leave. It's probably like 2:15, 2:30 in the morning. So I was picking up the trash and I was coming back across the street and I saw one of my musician friends sitting there by the club. And I said, I'll pull this over here. You can go ahead and make that bigger. And here's my friend RuPaul, who at the time was a musician in Atlanta, a performer, singer in a band, and we just called him Ru. And RuPaul's about 6'4", so I'm 6'3", so he's just a little bit taller than I am. And we just had a friendship. And so I said, hey, Ru, what are you doing? He goes, well, I thought I had somewhere to sleep tonight, but I don't have anywhere to go. And the person I thought was going to pick me up is not picking me up. And so I said, well, I'll tell you what, you can just come to my house and you can crash on the couch. And he said, okay, cool. So you can come back to me, Eddie. So he comes to my place, and of course, RuPaul being 6'4", he was too tall for the couch. So he took a blanket and he was sleeping on the floor. And at the time, RuPaul had a little mohawk on his head, like a little short one. And so all you could see was a little head sticking out from the blanket there. He was sleeping on the floor. At the time, my girlfriend was had to get up early and go to work. She wasn't a late night person. And she immediately came and said, who is that on my floor? And I said, well, that's my friend RuPaul. And she goes, I prefer if you don't bring people I don't know here to the house. I'm like, okay, I understand that, but you didn't have where to go. And I know him, I trust him, so gave him a place to crash for the night. Okay, well, please don't do that anymore. Okay. So next morning, RuPaul and I wake up and get back in my car, drive him back down to Atlanta and drop him off somewhere. And that was it. A little later on, we both moved to New York at the same time, and I'd see RuPaul around New York and go to some of his shows, and I got him to be on our college radio station. It was the first media appearance he ever had in New York City, was on our college radio station. Whenever I'd see him, it was always real friendly. Hey, Ru, how's it going? Hey, Q, how you doing? Good. And subsequent to that, it was lost touch. He went on in his career and moved to California. And I remember when I first came back to Oklahoma in the early 90s, I was in a Walmart. And back then, you could get cassette singles. And I noticed that there was a cassette single, which I still have today, that had RuPaul with Elton John. And they were doing a song together. I was like, RuPaul and Elton John, RuPaul's going to be all right. He's okay now. Everything's going to be okay. And then subsequent to that, he goes on to what? Extreme stardom. Multiple awards for his television shows. Lots of income. Speaking of what Kenyon was talking about earlier, really changed the viewpoint of how people perceive gender in the country, and may be one of the reasons for some of the backlash against it over the last few years. So since then, I've not interacted with RuPaul, but I consider him an inspiring person. And the reason why is because he followed his vision of who he wanted to be and what he wanted to do. And there was a point where he did not have a place to sleep, nowhere to go. And to me, when you don't have any place to go at night, that's a low point in your life, because it's very disconcerting not knowing where you're going to sleep safely for a night. And yet, here is a person who, you can close that if you want to, Jacob. Or Wyatt, either one of you, both getting up there. So here is a person who had hit a low point in their life, but didn't stop them from what they wanted to do and who they wanted to be. Now, not everyone may agree with how RuPaul lives his life, but he gets to live his life how he wants to, as long as he's not hurting or damaging anybody else. So my recognition out of all this is that you all at some point or another are gonna hit a low point. You're not gonna be happy with life, something's gonna go wrong, somebody close to you that you really love may die. There may be an unexpected occurrence where it's not even your fault and something negative happens to you. The bottom may fall out of a job. You may have to use every last dime that you've saved in your Kenyan savings account because something happens and now you're broke. So what do? Well, as we always used to say, you pick yourself up and you start moving forward in the direction that you want to go. And that's what RuPaul did, was he never stopped believing in himself, who he was, and how he wanted to go about his life, even if it was at a point where he didn't have a place to sleep. And so my encouragement to all of you is when you hit that low point, think about RuPaul not having a place to sleep at night, needing a friend to give him a place to crash. And yet, 10 years later, he's on a cassette single with Elton John. 20 years later, he's got a hit television show, Millionaire, because he followed his own vision. So when you're picking someone, just because I have an interaction with somebody that's famous from back in the day, doesn't mean we're close friends or anything. It just means I had this experience at one time. And as you go through life, if you do meet famous people and you want to have your picture with them or whatever, that's all cool because that's a good memory for you. Whereas that person gets his or her picture with people all the time. It's a common part of being a celebrity. Just because you have your picture with somebody doesn't mean that you're friends. It means you have a good memory from that association. But with RuPaul, I had a genuine connection back there just because of where I worked and being around musicians and being a kind person and trusting this person. I wouldn't just buy anybody home, but I trusted him. So as you think about an inspiring person in your life, I would talk about my son also, who was born with birth defects in his hands from what's called amniotic band syndrome. So one finger, a couple of his fingers didn't form completely. And yet he became an excellent guitarist with smaller hands and missing fingers. Those of us that have all our hands complain about how hard it is to play guitar. Try and play guitar when you're missing some fingers. I'll talk about our former professor here, Dr. David Tate, who's deceased now. And he believed strongly in his Christian mission, so strongly that he ministered to sex offenders who were sent to a remote location and live in kind of a trailer park where they can't interact with any women. No women or children are allowed there. And we typically think of sex offenders as the dregs of society. They're the worst. And yet, my friend David Tate felt they were in the most need. They needed him the most. So he would go down there once a month and minister to them. And during Thanksgiving week, he went down and they had a meal. And they went from the camp on one side, where all the trailers were, across the street to another building where their families were, and they would eat. He was taking some food that his wife had prepared, and it was right about dusk, and he was wearing a long black priest's frock, and he was hit by a kid and killed like that. So one day he's here at school, the next day he's not here at school, he's deceased. But he lived a high ideal. He was an excellent teacher, but he was also an excellent person. And so he inspires me because what he did, people that we think don't deserve anything, he felt needed the most help. So I encourage you not to judge somebody too quickly because of what is in their past. Judge them by their actions of today and how they carry themselves forward. So on Monday, what I'd like for you to have is a proposal ready to go to talk about a person who is significant in your life that has inspired you, that can further encourage us to go forward in a positive way. Okay? So with that, I'll wish you all a good day, and we'll see you next week.